Listen to the story to the end and write your comments. And don't forget to subscribe.
I saved my husband from prison when we were just 20 years old. 20 years later, he testified in court and sent me there instead. This story happened to me back in 1955, when girls still wore pin curls to bed, men came home with grease under their fingernails, and neighbors borrowed sugar without asking. Back when I thought love meant silence, and silence was a kind of loyalty. I was 19 when I met Ray Boone. He was 22. Tall, with strong shoulders and a mouth that always looked like it was about to smirk. He smoked Lucky Strikes, combed his hair back with cheap pomade, and had a laugh that made you want to lean closer just to hear it again. The girls at the diner called him Trouble. My mama called him Trash. I called him mine. I married him that same year. It wasn't a church wedding. We went to the courthouse in Albany, just the two of us. He bought me a peach soda afterward and kissed my hand like I was a queen. I still had the receipt from that soda in my purse 10 years later when he sent me to prison. But let's not jump ahead. Let me tell you what it looked like in the beginning. Because every storm starts with sunshine. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a pawn shop on Lexington Avenue. The wallpaper peeled in the corners, and the floor creaked like it had secrets. Ray said it was just a starter spot, but 3 years later, we were still there, one sink, a window that didn't open, and the neighbor's jazz radio coming through the wall like a ghost. Ray was always working on something. He never kept a job more than a few months, mechanic, delivery driver, sometime welder. He said bosses were crooks, that he didn't like people telling him what to do. What he did like was cash. He always had some. Always crumpled bills in his pocket, always paid for things in exact change. I asked once where it came from. Side deals, he said. Legalish. I didn't push. That was my first mistake. Our daughter, Hazel, was born in 1958. She had Ray's eyes, pale green, like spring leaves. She barely cried even when she was hungry. Strong-willed. From the start. When I went into labor, Ray wasn't there. He was working a thing, he said later. Showed up at the hospital 12 hours after Hazel was born with whiskey on his breath and roses missing the price tags. I should have thrown them at him. Instead, I smiled and said, "She looks just like you." That was my second mistake. In 1960, Ray got into something bigger. I could tell. The phone rang more often. He started locking the drawer under the bed. He came home with bruises he said were from work. He kissed me harder than usual when he left, like he knew something I didn't. One night, he came home late. I was feeding Hazel in the kitchen. He stood in the doorway, soaked in sweat, shaking. "They're gonna come for me," he said. "Unless you help." He told me he'd been at a warehouse, picking up some shipment for a friend. A guy showed up. There was shouting, something got thrown, a cop got hit. I wasn't the one who did it, he said. But I was there. They saw me. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I need you to say I was here with you. All night. That we were together." I should have told him to get out. But I remembered that hospital room. And Hazel. And the way he held me that morning. He brought home bagels and said we'd get out of the city someday. So I lied. I told the cops he'd been home. I described what he wore. I gave them fake details, all made up. The charges were dropped within a week. Ray bought a new watch with gold trim and said, "You're the reason I'm free." I smiled. But inside, something twisted. Life moved on. But Ray got bolder. He started driving a Cadillac. Brand new. Said a friend let him borrow it. Then it was a trip to Miami for business. Then a new TV. Then rumors. People whispered that Ray Boone was into something deep. Numbers. Cash. Gambling. Maybe drugs. I asked him. Once. He slammed the door so hard it cracked the wall. Didn't speak to me for 2 days. So I never asked again. That was mistake number 3. By 1969, Hazel was 11, and I was tired. Ray spent more time out than in. He came home with perfume on his collar. When I asked, he laughed. People hug, babe. Calm down. But I wasn't stupid anymore. I started writing things down. Dates. Times. Names I heard on the phone. Part of me still hoped I was wrong. That he'd come back one night and say, "Let's go, Lila." Just us. That night never came. Instead, came the raid. March 3, 1970. 2:14 a.m. The door flew open. Police. Flashlights. Shouting. Hazel screamed from her room. I ran to her. They pulled me away. Handcuffed me in front of her. They found bags in the closet, pills, money, a gun I'd never seen. Ray wasn't there. He was in Atlantic City. When they asked me who the stuff belonged to, I said I didn't know. They charged me anyway. Said I was covering. Said I'd lied before. When I saw Ray 3 days later, I was in a holding cell, and he was in a suit. He sat across from me and said, "I had to talk, babe." They had me cornered. I blinked. "You told them it was mine?" He looked away. "I told them you stored things. That you were scared of me. That you didn't know better." He slid a paper across the table. "If you plead guilty, they'll go easy. You'll be out in 2." I looked at the man I had saved. The man I had covered for, fed, raised a daughter with. And I realized, he never loved me. He loved being protected. I didn't sign the paper. They gave me 6 years anyway. Hazel went to live with Ray's sister. And I went to Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. Not for a crime I committed. But for the lies I told in the name of love. I still remember the smell of the bus that took me upstate. It wasn't just the sour stink of sweat and fear. It was that sterile, institutional cold, metal bars that had been cleaned too many times, the lingering scent of disinfectant mixed with old rust. And the silence. The kind that gets under your skin and stays there. I sat by the window, wrists cuffed, looking out as the city faded into farmland, thinking about Hazel. Was she brushing her hair herself now? Did she ask where I was? Did Walter tell her the truth? Bedford Hills Correctional Facility sat like a fortress carved into the trees. Concrete buildings, high fences, guard towers like vultures perched on the roof. I was 34, had never been north of Yonkers, and suddenly, I was property of the state of New York. I told myself it wouldn't last. They'd figure out I didn't belong there. Walter would talk to someone. The truth would come out. But it didn't. The first night, I didn't sleep. There was a woman sobbing in the next bunk. A guard shouting down the hallway. The flicker of fluorescent lights that never turned fully off. I held my blanket like it could protect me from the truth. I wasn't going home. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not in a year. They gave me 6. Year 1 was rage. I wanted to scream, tear the walls down. I imagined Walter's smug face and the way he looked away from me at the jailhouse. I imagined throwing a chair through the visitation window. But all I did was sit. Eat. Walk in circles in the yard. My body stayed still, but my mind ran wild. Every night, I played the memory of our last Christmas on repeat. Hazel in a red velvet dress. Walter carving the ham. I used to think those were the golden days. Now they felt like fiction. Year 2 was silence. I stopped writing letters. Walter never answered them anyway. I sent one to Hazel, just one, through his sister. I told her I missed her. That I was thinking of her every day. I folded a paper flower and tucked it inside. I never got a reply. One day I heard from another inmate that Walter had told folks I was mentally unstable. That I'd been sick for a long time. That I'd lied to the police, stolen his money, and ruined the family. And I realized something. He wasn't waiting for me to come home. He was erasing me. I made a decision that night. If he was going to bury me, I'd claw my way back up from the dirt. But not with screaming. With time. With watching. With learning. In prison, you either rot or you grow teeth. I chose teeth. I took every class they offered. Typing. Bookkeeping. Criminal law. I watched the other women, listened to their stories. Some were guilty as hell. Some were just like me. Most had a man's name at the root of it all. I kept a notebook under my mattress. Wrote down everything I remembered from Walter's business. Names. Dates. Places. I didn't know why at first. Maybe I just wanted proof that I wasn't crazy. That I hadn't imagined the way he used me like a shield. One day, I was called to the warden's office. A woman in a gray suit was waiting. Said she was from legal aid. She'd been assigned to review my case, said there were inconsistencies in my trial record. I wanted to believe it meant something. That someone, somewhere, believed me. But after months, nothing came of it. She sent me a letter saying, "We regret to inform you that no appeal will be pursued at this time." That was the moment the last flicker of hope inside me went out. Not the day I got sentenced. Not the day Hazel stopped writing. That letter. It was like a door closing for good. Year 4, I got into the library program. I filed books by day, read them by night. I became invisible. The guards called me Mouse. Other inmates came to me for help writing letters, filling out forms. I liked the silence. Because silence is safe, until it isn't. Then one day, I heard my daughter's name. I was in the yard when someone behind me said, "You hear about that girl in Queens? The Dean kid? Arrested for shoplifting." I turned around so fast I nearly fell over. "What did you say?" The woman blinked. Some judge's daughter. Hazel Dean. She tried to walk out of Macy's with a purse. My stomach turned to ice. Hazel. Shoplifting. I hadn't seen her in 5 years. I wrote a letter that night, hands shaking. Dear Hazel, I don't know if you'll read this, but I heard what happened. I'm not mad. I'm not disappointed. I'm just here. Still your mother. Always. I never got a reply. But the letter didn't come back either. That was something. Year 5, I met Marcy. She was new. 25. In for stabbing her boyfriend after he knocked her teeth out. She was loud, funny, dangerous. We were opposites, which meant we got along just fine. She called me professor, said I walked like I was still wearing heels from another life. She told me her dreams. I told her mine. I told her everything. One night she said, "You still love that man." I laughed. Not love, I said. Just haven't figured out what I am without him yet. She nodded like she understood. Then maybe it's time you start. Year 6, I got parole. I walked out on a cold February morning. Same bus, same cold metal. But I wasn't the same. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I carried a box of books, one framed picture of Hazel, and the notebook. Walter didn't come to pick me up. Of course he didn't. I took the train back to the Bronx. Everything had changed. New buildings. Different faces. My old street had a pizza shop where the pawn shop used to be. Walter had moved. I knew that already. I'd overheard a guard say he'd remarried. A woman named Joyce. Younger. Blonde. Real estate agent. Hazel was in college now. Studying psychology, someone said. I rented a room in a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Green. She had soft hands and eyes like mine, tired but not broken. I got a job in a church kitchen. I folded laundry. I walked slowly. I read my notebook. And one night, I took the subway to Queens and sat across the street from a townhouse with blue shutters and a rose bush by the door. I saw her. Hazel. She was laughing with friends on the porch. She looked like Walter, but she had my walk. I didn't go up to her. Not yet. I wasn't ready. But I will be. Because some stories don't end with revenge. Some end with a woman walking away, head high, heart scarred but intact, while the people who tried to break her are buried beneath the silence they created. I didn't just survive them. I erased them. And that's why, to this day, when I tell the story, I start with the truth, not the pain. Because it was never about what they did. It was about what I did next. The day I saw Hazel again, truly saw her, I didn't recognize my own daughter. She was standing at the top of the courthouse steps in downtown Brooklyn, clipboard in hand, heels sharp enough to cut marble, talking to a man in a charcoal suit like she owned the damn building. She wore a name tag that read, Hazel Boone, legal aid intern. Boone. He made her keep his name. That was the part that hit hardest. I had come to the courthouse on a quiet Tuesday morning, just to request my sealed court records. I hadn't planned to see her. But when I stepped into the hall, there she was, laughing with the clerk behind the glass. And just like that, 20 years vanished. Her profile, her voice, the flick of her hair, it all came rushing back. But so did the ache. Because she didn't see me. And even if she had, she wouldn't have known me. I didn't approach her that day. I watched from the far bench, lips tight, hands clenched. Later that night, I wrote in my notebook. She is not gone. He only made her forget. And that was when I knew. This wouldn't end in silence. It would end in truth. The next morning, I started making calls. There were still a few people who remembered me. Women I met inside. A paralegal named Ruth I'd helped with GED tutoring. A retired court typist whose son owed me a favor. Piece by piece, I started building a picture. Walter Boone, now co-owner of a construction firm called Boone and Hartwell Developments, had made a name for himself in the outer boroughs. Real estate, zoning deals, a few quiet donations to the city council. No criminal record. No outstanding debts. Of course not. Walter was always good at staying just inside the lines. His new wife, Joyce, handled the real estate licenses. Blonde. Smiled with her teeth, but not her eyes. Ran a weekly charity brunch for young women seeking second chances. I nearly laughed out loud. Hazel, now 23, was finishing law school. She lived alone in a walk-up in Forest Hills, and by all accounts, believed her mother had been sick and had died when she was a teenager. That lie was the cruelest of all. He didn't just abandon me. He rewrote me. So I started doing what Walter never thought I would. Learning the system. I filed for full unsealing of my criminal records. I petitioned to access court transcripts under the Freedom of Information law. I took my notebook, the one I kept hidden for 6 years in prison, and I began organizing everything. Dates. Transactions. Phone numbers. Details about side businesses Walter had run out of our old apartment. Names of cops he paid off. Who visited when. What went missing. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth in the sunlight. I needed legal help. Someone unconnected. Someone bold. And I found her in the back of a newspaper ad. Esther Mahoney, PI/case researcher/former court clerk. Her office was above a laundromat in Flatbush. She wore pressed pants and red lipstick and didn't blink when I said, "My husband framed me for his crimes and rewrote my entire life." She took one look at the notebook and said, "When do we start?" We started small. Esther traced old business registrations. Walter's firm had been built on capital transferred from a shell company once registered under my name. She dug into real estate filings. Found 3 properties deeded over in 1972, the same year I was released, all traced back to accounts we opened when we were married. My name had been quietly removed from every record. But signatures didn't lie. "I hope he never learned to forge," Esther said with a grin. The first domino fell when she found an affidavit from 1969, signed by Walter, claiming sole ownership of assets, including a statement that I had been institutionalized and mentally unfit to manage family affairs. That affidavit had helped him secure a bank loan. A fraudulently filed one, since I was fully imprisoned at the time, not in any hospital. It was enough to reopen a financial misconduct case. We packaged the files, prepared the complaint, and sent it to the district attorney's office, anonymously. But that was just the beginning. Now, I had to decide. Should Hazel know? Esther said, "She deserves to know the truth." I nodded. But my hands shook for 3 days. I wrote her a letter. "Hazel, you don't know me. But I am your mother. I was not mentally ill. I was not unfit. I was erased. Your father testified against me to protect himself. I have the proof. You deserve to see it. I don't want money. I don't want anything from you but your eyes. Look. And then decide what to believe. I left no return address. I mailed it. Then I waited. 2 weeks passed. Then came a knock at the door. It was her. Hazel. On my doorstep. She didn't say anything at first. Just stared at me. You look like me, she whispered. No, I said. You look like me. We sat in my kitchen for 4 hours. She read the notebook. She read the court transcripts Esther helped me retrieve. She said, he told me you had breakdowns. That you'd tried to burn the apartment once. I shook my head. He needed you to forget me. So you'd stay loyal to him. She was silent for a long time. Then she asked, what do we do now? And just like that, I had my daughter back. But more than that, we had a mission. Walter Boone didn't know it yet. But the world he built on lies had just been lit on fire. In the months that followed, everything started to crack. Esther and Hazel worked together to send files to multiple agencies, IRS, Department of Buildings, DA's Fraud Division. A subpoena was issued. Then another. Whispers started in the real estate community. Joyce Boone was seen leaving a zoning meeting in tears. Hazel went public, filed a formal affidavit with the bar, explaining the truth about her mother's imprisonment. It made headlines in local legal circles. Walter finally showed up. At my door. He looked older. Grayer. But still sharp. He had the audacity to say, I did what I had to do. I looked him dead in the eye. You did what was easy. And now, finally, it's going to be hard. He asked me, what do you want? I smiled. Nothing. He blinked. I want you to live every day knowing you were outsmarted by the woman you tried to bury. And then I shut the door in his face. Some men destroy things with fire and fury. But others, like Walter, build their kingdoms on paper. So I used that paper to take it all away. The fall of a man like Walter Boone doesn't come with fire and sirens. It comes slowly, like rot behind a painted wall. By the time anyone sees it, the damage is already too deep. It started with the audit. The IRS flagged discrepancies in Walter's tax filings going back 12 years, inconsistencies tied to fraudulent business write-offs and misused shell companies. The ones he'd built with money that used to be mine. Then came the ethics complaint, filed by Hazel herself, through her law firm. That Walter Boone had falsely institutionalized his wife to avoid criminal prosecution, used her legal identity to secure assets, and knowingly committed perjury to obtain custody of their child. It landed on the front page of the New York Post. Real estate kingpin accused of burying wife's past. Joyce left him 2 weeks later. Packed her bags, moved out of the penthouse, and filed for divorce citing fraud and emotional cruelty. When the photos of Walter leaving his firm in handcuffs hit the news, hair wild, eyes hollow, I sat in my kitchen, sipping tea, and let the moment breathe. He'd always wanted to be someone important. Now he was. Just not in the way he planned. Hazel came by the next day. She didn't say anything at first. Just sat at the table, looking at me. Then, finally. He always told me you left because you couldn't handle being a mother. I looked her in the eyes. And what do you believe now? She didn't hesitate. That you survived. That you were stronger than both of them combined. We didn't cry. We just sat there. Two women who'd been broken by the same man, one as a wife, one as a daughter, and found each other again in the silence he left behind. The case didn't go to trial. Walter pled out, 2 years in minimum security, forfeiture of over $2 million in assets, and permanent disbarment from any public-facing business operations. Hazel testified before the City Ethics Committee. Esther and I watched the hearing from the back row. Hazel wore a black suit and red lipstick, like fire under control. When the chairman asked why she was coming forward now, she said, "Because lies don't become truth with time. And because women like my mother deserve more than silence." I didn't look away. Not once. The hardest part came weeks later, when Hazel brought me a small envelope. It was from Walter. I didn't want to open it. But I did. Inside was a single, handwritten letter. Lila. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. But I wanted you to know, I was afraid. Afraid you'd expose me. Afraid you were always better than me. I tried to bury you so I wouldn't have to face what I was. Now I have. I hope, one day, you sleep without hearing my name in your chest. Walter. I folded the letter once. Then I burned it. That summer, I moved into a small house upstate. Nothing fancy, just a porch, a garden, and enough quiet to hear myself think. Hazel visited every Sunday. We planted tomatoes, argued over crossword puzzles, and slowly began to piece together the 30 years we'd lost. She called me Mom for the first time on a Thursday. I didn't respond at first. I just looked at her. She smiled and said, "It's about damn time, isn't it?" I nodded. "Yeah," I whispered. "It is." Years later, when my granddaughter asked why I never remarried, I told her this. Because love, real love, doesn't take from you. And I gave too much of myself to a man who didn't know what to do with it. So now, I keep my love for me. I still keep the notebook. Not out of bitterness, but as proof. Proof that I was never crazy. Never weak. Never gone. Just waiting. And when I tell this story, when women younger than me ask how I survived, I say this. He didn't break me. He freed me. Because sometimes, losing everything is exactly how you start to rebuild.